Shabbat shalom, everyone. If I have to say so myself, I love this message.
Yep.
Yep. Miriam and I have been talking about it. Actually, we went for a long walk and we were talking about some of these things, discussing them. And you know, I love the characters in our scriptures. They're not perfect people. They've all failed, every single one of them, which gives us the right to fail. We're going to make a lot of mistakes during our long or short lives on this planet. And but God makes a way for us. You know, I was thinking that the first 40 years of my life, I didn't have the proper boundaries. I wasn't lived in a home that taught the boundaries of God. Even though we were living in the Jewish community. But the second 40 years of my life was very different. I had come to know God and was learning new boundaries. And I'm almost at the end of the second 40-year period. So I'm looking forward to the third 40-year period, which is not that far away. You know, that's what happened with Moses. The first 40 years, Moses was in Egypt. The second 40 years, he was in the desert. And the last 40 years, he was writing down the second 40 years, he was writing it all down. But we can see ourselves in many of these characters. But one of the most important things we have to remember is don't add or take away anything away from what God says. But let's not cling to what they call the letter of the law, the letter of the Torah, to each word, because we get caught in, we can't see the forest for the trees. We have to, as Rabbi would tell us, step back. What is the bigger picture? What is this person trying to depict? What are the messages, the morals? And today the Torah is giving us true wisdom and truth, whereas the world is offering us, as we call, the emperor's new clothes. And you can't find reason in what the world is teaching us. And one of the other things that I didn't talk about was the two themes that I saw in this portion. And one of the things that they say several times is that we are to rejoice with our household. Be happy, rejoice with what God has given us. Remember all the blessings. And he's constantly bringing us back to Egypt. He set us free. And we're not to go back to those gods. And I mentioned a few of the gods. And he is the one, God is the one who saves us. Moshiach. It's only God. Man cannot save us. We can only be saved by the Creator. And it was sometimes I wonder, over and over and over, we keep making the same mistakes. Why would we keep wanting to return to the gods of Egypt with different faces? So don't look at the thing he's telling us not to do, but look at the principle behind it. To me, this portion was just so rich. Anybody has something they'd like to add?
Always. Thank you for that really good message. I guess that the whole thing about boundaries is when, you said at one point that, it's difficult. I mean, life is difficult and it is difficult, but the difficulty, I don't believe, is what we think it is, like the boundaries, like people who say I'm free now in every way with their lives, with who they are, and the fluidity of everything, including gender, all these things which seem free do not produce people at peace. There's so much depression and so much, and even in different communities, for example, one community, transgender, there's a lot of unhappiness. So it's not, freedom isn't just, well, you said this too, doing whatever you want. Boundaries actually they're not always that they're hard. I don't know how to say. Boundaries are for safety, for your safety. So in that sense, it's easy. It's easy in the sense that you're secure. Safety comes from the protection of boundaries. And the boundaries that God gave us are not hard in the sense that, well, you have to do this and you have to do that. You have to make sure that everything is exactly right. It's a way to live that's for our safety. And I mean, it is hard to, the things that I find really hard and that are hard are to keep your principles and not be afraid to say what they are. You know, like I have somebody in my family who's gay. And how do I deal with that? I mean, you know, they're a human being and I love this person, but you have to you have to stand up for what you believe. It doesn't mean you go and lecture them, but you have to, they have to know what you believe. And so these things are hard, but in terms of living our life and like the fullness of life with God, even in our pain, could you imagine without God? Your pain would be, you know, it's a journey, but it's really a beautiful one, even with its hardship. So boundaries are for our protection.
You know, it's funny because it always reminds me, I saw they did an experiment at a school, and it always reminded me about these boundaries. And this school was near a very busy highway, and they had a fence, and the kids would always play at recess, lunchtime. They'd play in the whole yard, and they'd go right up to the fence and play against the fence and hit balls against the fence. And one day they did an experiment and they removed the fence. The kids no longer went anywhere near there. They all stayed near the building, far away, because they needed the boundaries for their own sense of security. And obviously they put the fence back up, but we do need good fences in our lives.
Even in, you know, psychopathology and all these, you know, the realm of psychology and they've done many studies and for example, schizophrenia. Like, I'm not talking about the fact that there are brain, you know, aspects of our brain that, you know, can cause certain illnesses, but I'm talking on another level. Many emotional disorders were arise in places where there are no boundaries. You know, you can do anything. I mean, it's very, very, very common to see that in dysfunction, that without boundaries, you know, you don't form in a way that's secure. You don't feel safe. But anyway, it's there are many disorders that show this too.
Right. We need to have boundaries in balance.
Yeah.
You know, everything is balance in this world. It's a balancing act. Our whole lives are a balancing act to choose between the blessings and the curses. The warnings, and I would say I like warnings better, because we can choose one or the other. We have the capability. We know what's wrong. We know what's right. Yes, Brian.
I like Mary's blue walls.
You like her blue walls?
I don't have a blue wall.
She doesn't have a blue wall.
Blue walls? No,
yours is white, hers is blue.
No, because that's her light is not on.
Well, this light is on.
Yeah, but the light behind, if she turned on the light, it would look, it just goes to show you what things are not always as they seem to be, Brian.
But it looks bluish to me.
Yeah, it looks good. You like blue. I'm wearing blue today. You're wearing blue, Brian. Blue is a nice color.
I like blue too.
Me too. Yeah, the color of Israel, white and blue. Kahol v'lavan. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to this treatise, this message from this morning? If not, we can say, yes, Moshe.
Everyone.
Shalom, shalom.
Yeah, I hope you can get me clearly there.
Pardon?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Um, I'm so glad that we read the parasha, and it is very interesting. When I was revising it, I I spent like 15 minutes smiling, and when I looked at what it wants us to do is to gain morale in loving the Torah, gain morale in loving the God's rules and regulations. We can call them the commandments.
Moshe, Moshe, I'm
And
sorry. It's very difficult to hear you, the connection that you have today. I know that Mugalia was here for a while and he had to leave because the connection was very bad. So I'm sorry, I
Okay.
can't hear you. There's too much static.
Okay, let's continue. Let's continue. I will write to you.
Okay, if you write it to me, that would be better.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Yanette. Also, Yanette wrote, I think they had to leave. She were also having trouble. She thought it was a good drush. I want to thank Etid and Isabel for their participation in editing the translation. I want to thank Google for helping me translate. Richard, I know you're driving. Do you have anything that you want to add before we say goodbye for the day?
Forgot to come on. I told Mildred. to
No,
come.
not really. I got a lot out of
That's
listening
great.
to Ash and listening to other people.
That's
So-
great. Well, it's really important that
Mildred, she-
it's really
Yeah.
important that the lessons that we learn from the Torah are to be applied to our lives. Just learning these things, amassing knowledge, is not what the Torah is about. It's about how we apply. Because, one of the things that that's what Yeshua was so upset with when he talked about his fellow Jews, is that they would make rules and regulations that were so heavy that they themselves were unable to bear the burden of them. And that's what religions do. What God wants us to do is to live within his boundaries so that we can be blessed. And when we're blessed, we bless others. Yes, Richard.
Yeah, about what you just said about extra rules. Looking back, I can sympathize with the people that Yeshua was confronting. They wanted to, they had their own reason to build fences, so to speak. And they had experience with the first exile. They were under occupation. I'm not saying there wasn't corruption. However, other people also find a lot of rules. So that I go back and forth in my head about how to interpret the thing about the extra rules. And also in the ethics of the fathers, oftentimes you'll see fencing as a metaphor, such as fencing around the Torah. So with that, I'll mute myself.
I totally understand what you're saying, Richard. Sorry, Miriam, did you want to say something?
Yeah, but you can.
It's
I-
not that, one of the things that our rabbi always said was that when a tradition, I've read Pirkei Avot, there were many wonderful things in there. Our Talmud has many wonderful things in it. When a tradition brings us closer to the Creator, It's good. There's nothing wrong with it. God has given us that freedom and that right, that ability. But when a group of men stand up and together say that what we wrote as humans has more value than God, and this way we can annul the word of God, in that way we don't have to buy into that. We disagree. So we're not saying, I mean, many of the things that we have in our Siddur come from the traditions of our elders, and they're good. But when a tradition takes us away from the creator of the universe and puts man into the state of godhood in comparison to the creator, that's when we have a problem. Our whole synagogue system, listen, we had a synagogue before we went online. We had a beautiful synagogue. Hundreds and hundreds of people passed through our synagogue, searching, looking to find God's truth. And we had wonderful holidays. Many of them have been passed down, our traditions passed down from our beloved rabbis. We're not saying you must not listen at all. Like Rabbi Shaul, Paul, what he said is read everything, search, but take what is good and throw out what isn't. So he wants us to think. Religions don't want us to think. Religions want us to accept, and that's it. You don't belong, you don't believe in what this religion teaches and all its doctrines, get out and go somewhere else. That's not what God is saying. He's given us freedom to use the brains that he gave us and to apply the teachings. That's what we're talking about here. Yeshua is made to look, we don't know who wrote the New Testament. We don't know for sure how many things were changed in it, which is why we don't consider it to be 100% authoritative. When the New Testament, or the so-called Brit Hadashah, whatever you want to call it, when this later book agrees with the Torah, we can say, most probably. But when it makes Jews look like the devil or Satan or evil, a people who are to be hated, this is not what God wants from us either. So we have to be really careful. We have to use sechel, wisdom, think, discuss. This is one of the things that we Jews are wonderful at, always arguing, discussing, and learning. But if we don't apply what they say, if someone says to me, well, the laws of kashrut, which is one of the things that Yeshua was pointing at, don't worry about what you put into your mouth, worry what comes out of your heart. He wasn't saying don't do what our forefathers did, but don't make them more important than God's commandments. That's what he said. You may say, I'm honoring my father and mother, but you know what, this month I have to give a big donation to the congregation and I can't take care of my parents. No, the 10 commandments have to come first. We have to abide by God's principles first, and then we can give. And what's true justice? What's the truth? Take care of the widow, the stranger, the widow, the orphan, the stranger among us. Love our neighbor as we love ourselves. We need to take care of each other. That's the bottom line of the Torah. And to know that there is no other God but the creator of the universe. I don't know if that makes a little
That's totally
sense.
Wonderful. I was going to say part of what you were going to say, but I just want to add, like, in response to you, Richard, one thing about the fence around the law. I believe when Yeshua was talking about their laws and all the extra additions, he wasn't referring literally to everything we do to add or subtract from the law. He's talking about the principle. These people, Pharisees or Sadducees who he was talking to, not all as a group, but particularly some of them, were very self-righteous. So I believe he was talking more about self-righteousness than laws that really protect. These laws did not make you safer. To me, the boundaries make you safer, and their laws and commandments, which ultimately protect us and help us to lead good, honest, warm and protected lives. He was talking to um, some of these leaders who really only cared about themselves and how they looked and how much money they gave or how much money they didn't give. And they were very, very into themselves. And he was addressing that, I believe. He wasn't telling, like, he wasn't criticizing the whole principle of adding certain traditions or whatever, as Peggy said. I believe it has to do with self-righteousness. It wasn't, they weren't adding these laws because it would make you a better person or help you to uphold the commandments. It was, for example, in my life, I have a very good friend, and she has a dog. Now, she's a good soul and she loves God, so I'm not saying that to put her down. But on Shabbos, again, they have a big backyard. On Shabbos, you have to take the dog
You
out.
didn't say she's Lubavitch.
Sorry?
You didn't say she's Lubavitch.
Oh yeah, she's Lubavitch. She's Orthodox, but she loves God. But on Shabbos, Shabbat, you know, her dog still has to go to the bathroom. But what she would do is give her dog for that day, the period of Shabbat, to a Gentile or a non-observant Jew, so that they can take the dog out to go to the bathroom, etc. Now that to me, I don't think she does it anymore, but whatever, that to me is folly. It's foolish. You know, we have to cook on Shabbat. We have to do different things, and let's keep the principle of Shabbat, not the anyway, things like that is where I agree with what Yeshua said about
Yes,
the
Richard.
fence around the law.
Richard, you wanted to respond to that?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, yes.
Okay, good. All right. Well, number one, I have one toe in the Lubavitcher community, not a big stake in it. My father liked to go to Chabad, all right? And so I come to honor him. I go there up sometimes about once a month to make my presence known. And the men there, it's mostly men, like to see me there because it reminds me of their father. I'm saying that because I don't see anything that terrible about what your friend did about the Shabbat and the dog thing. It's not the worst thing in the world.
I'm not saying that.
However, hold on a second.
No, yeah, it's okay.
I think it's a good thing. Okay, of all the laws that Yeshua challenged in Matthew, the washing of the hands, I don't think it's the most valid one. Okay, because it can be said that the washing of the hands is good for people, and in those days they didn't have a deep knowledge of science and hygiene. Okay,
Richard, let me interrupt you right there, because the washing of the hands, hold on a second. If you go into an Orthodox restaurant today and you see the washing of their hands, they're not washing their hands. They're taking the water from this special cup and they're putting it on their wrists with a prayer. It's not about washing the hands.
It has nothing to do with cleanliness.
It has nothing to do with cleanliness. It has to do with the ritual that was created before. What?
Am I understanding? Okay, am I understanding that the washing of that the people in Yeshua's time had a rule to wash hands that had nothing to do with being clean? Okay, if that's true, I retract what I said. All right. However, it may be the case that unless they had a side hustle with people who sold soap and water to people who wash their hands, I'm being facetious, of course, then I don't think it's such a bad thing that those Pharisee people did. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm just
well, I think here, Richard, that again, I love the Chabad. just don't get me wrong. I'm not, I just listened to a very thoughtful message. I didn't agree with all of it, but from a rabbi that I really, 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 I love in many ways. So I'm not against Chabad, but I'm just trying to make a point that Yeshua was talking about principles. You know, even keeping the lighting the candles is not in the Torah, but it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful tradition, you know. But honestly, the things that Yeshua was talking about were self-righteous things. They were things that made them look good, because they would criticize somebody who you know, when you read the whole, all the things that Yeshua said, he spoke about principles. He wasn't talking about not washing yourselves and keeping clean. He was talking about self-righteousness, really.
You know,
I mean, we light the candles. That's a beautiful tradition. We do many things that honor the tradition. You know, it's not about, like, don't take it so literally. It's you know, that anyway, that's my point, you know, is that is the bottom line is to honor God, and if things take away from that, that's when it becomes a burden, not a safety for us or a good thing, in my opinion.
you know, when you create all these traditions that obviously God did not create all these rules and regulations, and I have to say it because when all these regulations, most of them that were not created by God were created by man. Who do you think that honor? Does it honor God or does it honor man? It honors man, not God. That is what Yeshua was telling. When you have rules that the only thing that they do is just to be for the purposes of self-righteousness, that only elevates man, does not elevate God or Ruach, the spirit of the Creator, which is in us. You understand? So what it does is worse, because instead of united us as one in the spirit, in the Ruach of the Creator, it separates us. It makes us be more elevated at the looks of other people when we are all equal in the eyes of the Creator. That was the main purpose and the reason for that. Now, the problem with Israel, and I'm going to tell you, is that we, as a nation, we have forgotten the heritage and what we were chosen for, and the covenant that was given to Abraham, which was to spread the seed among, you know, in the world, okay, on the planet. And how are you going to spread the seed? How are you going to become unified with other nations when we have all full of regulations, which what they do is built to make to protect with the intention of protecting, but we are failing to accomplish the task that the Creator gave us, which is not only to spread the message, it's to bring the seed, it's to bring the spirit, the Ruach, which is in us, the Ruach of the Creator. And by bringing the Ruach of the Creator and spreading that to other people, to other nations, to other, is bringing the Creator himself and the knowledge of the Creator to these nations. But what we have been deceived in our own understanding, in our own creation of rules and regulations with intention. I'm not here to judge anyone, any rabbi, any old rabbis that they put things in order to protect the people, because in times of survival, the things that protect people was things like that put around it, okay? But this is only in times of survival. But the main purpose that God gave us, it was to open ourselves and to bring the knowledge of God, who created God's spirit, Ruach, is. And so the people will see, and the people will understand. And in order to become all one in the Creator, we have all to be part, you know, and become one.
Yeah, but it's also, Angel, it's also the spreading of the seed, it sounds very beautiful, but remember, it's also a very practical message. And
It is
it
the
has to
consciousness
do with
of
our
God. It
behavior.
have the consciousness of God, which means, okay, the reason why the Creator also give us free will, okay, because the Jewish people in itself, we were created, okay, to have we have this gift of individuality, of thriving, of that other nations don't have, okay. But the problem with the free will,
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, because there's a lot of nations who thrive and a lot of nations who are very individual. So I don't know what you're saying. The gift that God gave us was that his promise that he would bless the world through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yes, and how you expecting to bless other people when we are creating on Shabbat? Sometimes we have created limits of where you can go, the limit of you can go, the limit you can walk. When we should be, keep what the Creator told us.
But he did it for us. He gave the Shabbat for us so that we could have a day of rest, a day of rejuvenation, a day of remembering that he is our God, that he is the creator. We can't throw out everything, what we're saying, because we needed a lot of what the rabbis did throughout our century, from the time of the first exile in Babylon. We needed a lot of what they did, but we have to sift through and see, make sure we're not being self-righteous, we're not putting ourselves above God, that the traditions that he gave us, like a couple of weeks ago, I don't know what happened, I forgot to light the Shabbat candles. First time in years. So I just noticed that. I said, wow, what happened? It doesn't mean anything because God didn't tell me to light the Shabbat candles. But if I forgot, it's not the end of the world. We make, like right now, God says, write the Shema on the doorpost of our house. So we have a mezuzah. There's some people who, if they don't kiss the mezuzah, they think they're going to have bad luck all week. It becomes a superstition. It's the wrong, but doesn't mean I take away the mezuzah, but I just have to change my understanding and my attitude about it. You can't throw everything out. We still need order. And with his traditions and the things that he gave us, a lot of the order that the rabbis have given us are beautiful. But remember, at the time of Yeshua also, the temple was so corrupt. They were being paid by Rome to report back. So there's a lot of corruption that was going on, and that's what we have to fight against, the corruption.
May I say something?
Yes, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah. Suppose a religion tells you to light candles, and that religion gets their authority from what Yeshua said to Peter about I'm allowing Peter to build a community, or some say a church, whereby what in so many words, the rules that community or church makes is honored in heaven.
No, that's a Christian construct, Richard.
Okay.
It was taken out of context.
I'm just asking. Okay?
Right.
Because, okay, I don't think that I was trained in a field. I won't tell you what it is, but where in the days when I was working in it actively, we had debates and seminars about operating by principle or operating by rules. It isn't an unusual dilemma. Maybe it's a false dilemma. However, it's not so unusual to have a conflict between sticking to rules and following certain principles from which those rules presumably honor. I'm done talking.
I'm not sure I understood what you're saying. Miriam, did you understand?
I'm not sure, but what I think maybe you're misunderstanding, we're not saying don't have rules or don't even have different rules. It's if the source of those rules are not the principle of a God in whom we can have a relationship with and who protects us and cares for us, it's really quite simple, I think. We're not saying don't have rules. And even what you said about, my friend with her dog, I know she loves God. I don't make it's not a big deal. I'm not saying if she feels she needs to do that, but does that bring her closer to God? And does it bring her closer to the mandate that God is for everyone, including the Gentiles? The 10 Commandments, we were supposed to go to the Gentiles and spread the word that God has given these moral principles to the whole world. How could we think it's just for one people? We had a mandate. That's why God called us out. So if I'm going to go to somebody and who endorses giving her dog either to a non-believer or to a Gentile, that I believe is an addition that's not valuable. Do I think she loves God? Of course. Did I make a big simus about it, as they say in Yiddish? No. But my point is, her dog going to the bathroom in her backyard, which is there for the dog, what's wrong with that? On Shabbat. But if she doesn't want to do it, leave it there until Sunday and clean it up on Sunday. But don't go to another person who you're supposed to be a light to and tell them to do it. Though, Shabbat is really ultimately for everybody. So that's what I'm saying. Rules are, if she wants to keep that rule, that's fine. Clean up the doggy poo on Sunday. If people don't want to mix their soup on a Saturday because that's considered cooking or whatever, don't do it. But don't necessarily universalize that rule because it hinders other people from coming close to God. So that's all I'm saying. If the rules are there for the benefit and the growth in our relationship, in our walk with God, they are good rules. If they make another person apart, like this other person could do what I can't do because it's Shabbat, then that's wrong. Why would I go to a Gentile and say, I can't close my lights, would you do it? When really I should be a light to them. You're like, hey, this day is set aside because there's a God who protects everybody in the whole world. I'm just making a principle, a point of how I would try and live my life. Of course, it's hard, but I'm not against all rules or regulations that may be specific to a certain thing that you're involved in, but that's fine as long as it always remembers the basic rules and principles that are meant for us to live an honest, true life on this planet. That's the ultimate goal. Is to me the first question I would ask. If sometimes I feel like cracked out of an egg, I joke about that because of my previous experiences in life. My question is there a God? And if there is a God, how do we have a relationship with this God? Like, what an incredible concept that there is a God, a loving God, and we can have a relationship. So anything I do would be to enhance that walk, everything. And I wouldn't do something that separates me from another person. Why do I not, for example, like right now, I would really like to go buy some hummus, whatever, to bring to somebody, but I can't because it's Shabbat. The reason isn't such a picky thing. Oh, I'm going to spend a bit of money on Shabbat. It's because I'm going to go to somebody else and make them the break to Shabbat. It's not just the act of buying. It's what I'm going to do when I go into a store. What I'm saying is, it's okay for you to break the Shabbat, and I'm going to buy something, and you're working, and I'm endorsing you working. You know what? Do you get my point of what I'm saying at all? Or am I just rambling? Anyway,
if you're talking to me, may I speak? I can just defer to other people talking. I don't want to be the talking point here. So
no, I just wanted to make a point, that's all, about the rules and.
Okay, okay, suppose your friend that has that dog behavior thing,
Yeah.
suppose she didn't tell you her rule. Okay, suppose she just kept it to herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, would that change the picture for you?
No, I don't have anything against her. I'm not criticizing her walk with God. This is, when your rules, we're corporate, we're a community. We don't live private lives. So when that becomes a corporate rule, then I take exception to it.
Can I just interject here for a minute, Miriam? Because what happens here, Richard, is that it's like when Yeshua said, when he was speaking to some of the Pharisees, he says, you travel miles to make one proselyte, and then you put such heavy burdens on him that you are not even able to bear. So basically, it's impositional. Religions impose man's rules upon others, and that's where it's wrong. We see that even today with this woke community, where people who with aberrations, that's what I spoke about, aberrations of lifestyles, and even though they're a small percentage of the community, they're imposing upon others, and that's where it's wrong, right, Angel?
You know why? This is wonderful what you just said, because it proves that the Creator that gave us free will, and it did not force us. It says it's up to you to do what is good and what is right, or do what is wrong, and is it. But believe that you're gonna be, whatever you do and the decision that you take in your free will that the Creator gave us, you will be responsible and accountable for your actions.
Right.
Right? But now,
exactly.
Remember this, rules that have been set up by men. There's some that they are with good intentions and helps community. Okay, those are rules that they are to keep, because we remember things that we do it always looking for our well-being. If you don't, it's because you are religious and you are a fanatic. But if you do it, you are doing it with your heart, because you care about your family, you care about your children, you care about your neighbor, your family. But rules that they have been set up just for the mere purpose of controlling people. Okay, these are rules created by men, not by God. And when you say, for example, let's say, to give you an example, Richard, do you know in Shabbat you are not allowed to drive? Okay, but now what if you are driving to go to the synagogue because you want to be sharing in community, okay, with people, and sharing, listening to the Torah, listening to the spiritual teachings that the Rabbi brings, the experience of helping to each other to make it through this life, to go forward. But that is what the main purpose it is. It's to learn and to grow, because God did not create slaves. He did not want us to be slaves. He gave us rules for the purpose of us to learn and to understand who we are and what is the purpose of our existence.
Yeah.
So that
if you look at your home, Angel, you live out in the country, and the kids are outside playing all the time, and sometimes they're out there with muddy boots, and you and Karen made a rule in your home. When you come in the house, you leave your muddy boots by the door. It's a human rule, but it means it's good for everyone. So we have to make some rules that are not necessarily in the Torah, but you respect the rights of other people. If everybody was to trample, in their muddy boots all over the house, Karen would get upset because she's the one who has to clean it up.
But when you create the rules in order to justify that you cannot keep what a commandment of the Creator give us,
right,
like responsibility, not only for your own community, but for the ones that surround us, they call it the Goyim. We are meant to be with them. We are meant to be one. We are meant to spread the knowledge of the Creator. But we lose ourselves. We seclude ourselves when we are not. How do you expect us as a representative of the Creator? As God revealed to us through Abraham, and not only that, it's so important when you get it. when you understand, when our Jewish communities and our Jewish rabbis will understand that, number one, like for example, Moshe, who took a Bedouin as a wife, Isaac, okay, and Jacob, who took also, as a wife, outside of the community of the. You understand how important.
Well, there were no Hebrews yet. Who else were they going to go to?
But do you understand the purpose? We need to understand why God give us things. Why give us the command? We are not to be an army of slaves. We are to understand the essence. And when we do things, as long as we do with the essence of love, of harmony, creating a harmony among us, a peace of union. This is what God is. This is what the Ruach is, what the Creator is. But when we got,
what does love mean to you, Angel?
Well, we know that love in the Torah, basically, if we could resume, it's about obedience. It's about obedience without not knowing, which is part of as a Christian or other things called, or even Judaism, faith. To have faith of not knowing, but the problem is we know it, but we cannot prove it. It's within us. It's within every in the Israel nation, the Israelites. We have this thing inside that we know it. That is the reason why we had a chutzpah to challenge God and to fight with Him, like Israel did. Okay, because we have this in us. We have this knowledge. We know, but the problem is we have lost our way in our own understanding, in our own rules, in our own regulations, that we have completely missed. And the Torah, was created to allow us not to miss. We completely missed. That's what Rabbi always was saying. That it's understanding. The truth and the message of the Creator, instead of looking for other explanations, and God is not that complicated. When God gives us teachings and understanding or visions or messages like that, it's just to guide, to put us back into our own development as we are as humans, it's very, 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 when you look at it.
It's a simple message, but it isn't easy.
It is easy because there is one thing, okay? As the same way that we have this knowledge in us, and we have this individualism in us too, to decide and to do things, there is another one who overcomes. And when we let ourselves be ruled by our ego, when we leave our ego, we cannot be wrong, even though we know that we are, but we can have carried for generations and generations, and we cannot allow to stop and say, well, there is something that there's something that we are doing that is not according to the Creator's intention from the beginning, on plan.
Yeah.
It is when we have to put our ego away, and then it will, we have to open our hearts.
Well, we have to deal with these things. We have to deal with these things,
and we have to listen.
Yeah,
we have to listen again.
Which is why I said, "Be still and know that I am God." Anyway, we're coming to the end of this because we're just coming to the end of this part of our service, and I want to thank everybody for your participation. We look forward to, at the end of this Shabbat, we already look forward to next week's Shabbat. But take a good rest. Have a rest today. Let's keep praying for each other. We need to pray for Mauricio, who let me know that he's been quite ill. He couldn't come on today. What's the matter with him? It's the same thing that happened with me last week. I had a very bad flu. Yeah, he's had a lot of stress with his dad. So please keep everyone in prayer. Keep the basements of all the Alvarados and Muriel's basement in our prayers, that they get paid back by the insurance companies and they can make the reparations they need. Etid, I recommend that you contact the people who stole all that from you and let them know about the 10 Commandments and how they are going to be putting themselves under a curse and they have to make restitution for what they did. Don't let it go. You contact them and let them know that they are putting a curse on themselves, and they'll be scared. They'll be scared because our God will deal with them. Anyway, I want to wish you, thank you, Angel, thank you. And he's gone already. Jerry, nice to not hear you or see you, but I know you're here. Rhonda, Alvarado's, again, everybody, Baruch, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of Shabbat. God bless you all.
God bless you. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.